Hi, I'm Jennifer Taylor, and this is the story of how being just a receptionist turned me into the person who revolutionized the entire tech industry. But more importantly, it's about how sometimes the biggest innovations come from the people everyone overlooks. For 3 years, I worked as a receptionist at Taylor Technologies, my father's software company. Not exactly the position you'd expect for the CEO's daughter with a computer science degree from MIT, but Dad had his reasons. You need to learn humility, Jin, he'd said when I first asked for a development position. Starting at the bottom builds character. What he really meant was that he didn't trust my capabilities. After all, I was the artistic one who spent college summers coding indie games instead of pursuing prestigious internships like my brother Michael. Every morning, I greet executives in designer suits, schedule meetings I wasn't allowed to attend, and watch as my ideas were dismissed without a second thought. Just forward the calls, Jen, they'd say, barely glancing at me as they rushed to their important meetings. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that being a receptionist gave me a unique perspective. I saw everything, every visitor, every conversation, every problem that needed solving. More importantly, I had access to every complaint, every customer service call, and every bit of feedback that came through our front desk. During quiet afternoons between answering phones and scheduling meetings, I coded. My little hobby project, as Michael called it, started as a simple tool to manage the constant flow of visitor traffic and meeting schedules. But it grew into something more. I noticed patterns in our customer complaints, gaps in our service delivery, and inefficiencies in our workflows that nobody else seemed to see. So I built solutions. Small ones at first: automated scheduling, visitor tracking, predictive analytics for customer service loads. By my second year, I had developed a comprehensive AI-driven system that could revolutionize how companies handle customer interactions. Dad never noticed. He was too busy grooming Michael, fresh from his Harvard MBA, to take over the company. Michael, who couldn't code his way out of a Hello World program, but could talk for hours about market penetration and synergistic opportunities. Then came the day everything changed. I overheard Dad and Michael in the conference room discussing the company's image problem. Having your daughter as a receptionist sends the wrong message, Michael argued. We need to project professionalism, especially with the Microsoft deal coming up. Dad sighed. You're right. It's time Jin found a real career path. She's had her fun playing at being an employee. The next morning, Dad called me into his office. Jennifer, we need to talk about your future. I sat quietly as he explained how it was time for me to move on, how the company needed to maintain professional standards, how he was doing this for my own good. He even offered a generous severance package, his way of softening the blow of firing his own daughter. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the previous night finalizing the patent applications for my little hobby project. As I walked out of his office for the last time, carrying my small box of belongings, I smiled. Because in exactly 1 month, the Microsoft meeting they were so worried about would go very differently than they expected. The next month was a blur of activity, while Dad and Michael prepared for their big Microsoft meeting, convinced they were about to secure a life-changing partnership. I was busy putting the final touches on my project. My tiny apartment became command central. 3 monitors displayed different aspects of my AI system, which I'd named Iris, Intelligent Response Integration System. The irony of naming my creation after the receptionist of the Greek gods wasn't lost on me. Then came the email that changed everything. Dear Ms. Taylor, I've reviewed your proposal and prototype for IRS. Your integration of AI with customer service operations is exactly what we've been looking for. Would you be available to meet next Thursday at 2 p.m.? Best regards, Sarah Chin, VP of Innovation, Microsoft. I smiled, remembering how I'd submitted my project to Microsoft's innovation portal the day after Dad fired me. What Dad and Michael didn't know was that while they were pursuing Microsoft for a basic software integration deal, I had been quietly developing exactly what Microsoft had been searching for: a revolutionary AI system for customer service automation. The meeting with Sarah went better than I could have imagined. By the end, she wasn't just interested, she was enthusiastic. This is incredible, Jennifer, she said, examining Iris's capabilities. You've solved problems we've been struggling with for years. How long did it take your team to develop this? No team, I replied. Just me, working between answering phones and scheduling meetings. Sarah's eyes widened. You developed this while working as a receptionist? Sometimes the best solutions come from people who actually deal with the problems, I said simply. 2 weeks later, I received another email from Sarah. This one made my heart race. Jennifer, our CEO would like to see IRS in action. We're planning to visit Taylor Technologies next Thursday for their partnership proposal. Would you be willing to do a demonstration that same day? The timing seems appropriate. Sarah. I grinned as I typed my response. Dad and Michael had no idea that Microsoft's interest in Taylor Technologies was about to take a very unexpected turn. The day of the meeting arrived. I dressed carefully in a crisp charcoal suit, no more business casual receptionist attire. As I walked into Taylor Technologies' lobby, Lisa, my replacement, didn't recognize me at first. I'm here for the Microsoft meeting, I said, enjoying her double take. Oh, Miss Taylor, I'm so sorry I didn't. It's fine, I assured her, hearing familiar voices approaching from the conference room. Dad and Michael rounded the corner, deep in conversation with Microsoft's CEO and Sarah. Dad stopped mid-sentence when he saw me, his face shifting from confusion to alarm. Jennifer, what are you doing here? Before I could answer, Microsoft's CEO stepped forward, hand extended. Ah, Miss Taylor, the woman of the hour. We're very excited about your presentation. The color drained from Dad's face as he looked between us. Presentation? Sarah smiled. Didn't you know? The real reason for our visit today isn't your integration proposal. We're here to see Iris, your daughter's AI system. Though I'm surprised you hadn't mentioned it, given that it was developed right here in your company. And that's when I opened my laptop, ready to show them exactly what just a receptionist could do. The conference room fell silent as I connected my laptop to the display screen. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his expensive chair while Dad sat frozen, his face a mask of confusion and growing concern. Iris, I began, addressing the room, is an AI-driven system that revolutionizes how companies handle customer interactions. But rather than tell you about it, let me show you. I pulled up the live demo, displaying Iris's sleek interface. For the past 3 years, while working as a receptionist, I observed how our company handled customer service, visitor management, and internal communications. I noticed patterns, inefficiencies, and opportunities that you can only see from the front lines. Microsoft's CEO leaned forward, clearly intrigued. Go on. I demonstrated how Iris could predict customer needs based on historical data, automatically route inquiries to the right departments, and even anticipate potential issues before they became problems. Here's what Iris did with just 3 months of Taylor Technologies' customer service data, I said, pulling up a graph. It identified patterns that helped reduce response times by 70% and increased customer satisfaction ratings by 85%. Impossible, Michael interrupted. Our customer service metrics are proprietary. You wouldn't have access to that data as a receptionist. I smiled. Actually, every customer call, complaint, and compliment came through the front desk. I didn't just have access to the data, I was the one collecting it. Sarah from Microsoft pulled out a tablet, showing her CEO something. These numbers align with our test results. We ran IRES through our simulation environments last week. The performance was unprecedented. Dad finally found his voice. You developed this while answering phones. During lunch breaks, I replied, between meetings, while waiting for couriers. All those moments you thought I was just playing around on my computer. I paused, letting it sink in. It's amazing what you can accomplish when no one's paying attention to you. Microsoft's CEO stood up. Ms. Taylor, we've seen enough. We'd like to make you an offer. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a contract that made my breath catch. Microsoft wanted to acquire Iris for $120 million, with a separate contract hiring me as head of AI innovation. The room erupted in chaos. Michael was sputtering about loyalty and family obligations. Dad sat in stunned silence, staring at the contracts. But what happened next would prove that sometimes the biggest victories come with the hardest choices. I closed my laptop and faced my father directly. Before anyone signs anything, I have a counter-proposal. Dad looked up, his face showing a mix of pride, regret, and fear, emotions I'd never seen him display before. 3 years ago, you put me at the front desk to teach me humility. I said, pulling out another set of documents from my briefcase. But what you actually taught me was invaluable. I learned how this company really works from the ground up. I placed the documents on the table. So here's my offer. Instead of selling Iris to Microsoft, we partner with them. Iris becomes a joint venture between Taylor Technologies and Microsoft, with me leading the development team. Microsoft's CEO raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Go on. Taylor Technologies has the industry connections and infrastructure. Microsoft has the global reach and resources. Together, we could make IRS the new standard in business AI. Sarah quickly ran some calculations on her tablet. The potential revenue from a partnership model could far exceed the buyout offer within 5 years. Dad picked up the partnership proposal, his hands slightly shaking. You had this prepared all along. I learned from you, Dad, I said softly. Always have a backup plan. The next 2 hours were intense negotiations. By the end, we had a deal. iOS would become a joint venture, with Taylor Technologies owning 40%, Microsoft 40%, and me retaining 20% plus the role of Chief Innovation Officer. As the Microsoft team left, promising to have their legal department finalize the details, Dad asked me to stay behind. Michael had stormed out earlier, presumably to process the fact that his receptionist sister had just orchestrated the biggest deal in company history. Jen, Dad said, looking older and wiser than I'd ever seen him. I owe you an apology. Actually, I interrupted. You owe an apology to every receptionist, junior employee, and overlooked worker in this company, because I guarantee you, they all have valuable insights we've been ignoring. Over the next year, Taylor Technologies transformed. We implemented a company-wide innovation program, encouraging ideas from employees at all levels. Iris evolved beyond our wildest expectations, becoming the industry standard for AI-driven business solutions. Michael eventually came around, admitting that his Harvard MBA hadn't prepared him for the real innovation happening on the front lines. He now leads our corporate strategy, but he starts each new manager with a month at the front desk, a program we call the Jennifer Protocol. Last week, I gave the commencement speech at MIT. My topic? Innovation from the ground up, why every position matters. As I looked out at the graduating class, I shared the lesson I'd learned from my time as just a receptionist. That true innovation doesn't care about your title, your office, or your position on the org chart. It cares about your ability to see problems and imagine solutions. Dad attended the speech, sitting proudly in the front row. These days, he spends more time listening to his employees and less time making assumptions about their potential. The company's performance reflects this change. Our stock price has tripled, and our employee satisfaction ratings are at an all-time high. As for me, I still keep a photo of my old reception desk in my corner office. It reminds me that sometimes the best view of a company isn't from the top down, but from the ground up, and that the next revolutionary idea might come from the person answering your phones, if only you're willing to listen. After all, I'm living proof that you should never underestimate just a receptionist.
The backyard barbecue was my idea. I'd invited my parents, my brother Jason and his fiancée Michelle, and a few family friends to celebrate Jason's engagement. What I didn't expect was for my mother to use my grill to announce she was selling my house. "Everyone, we have exciting news," Mom said, tapping her wine glass for attention. "David and I have found the perfect way to give Jason and Michelle their dream wedding." I flipped burgers, half listening. My father smiled proudly beside her. "We're selling the Riverside property," Mom announced. "The house should fetch about $680,000, which means we can give the kids a $200,000 wedding and help them with a down payment on their own place." I stopped flipping. "The Riverside property?" "Yes, dear. This house." Mom gestured around my backyard like she was presenting it on a home shopping network. "It's been a wonderful family investment, but Jason's wedding is more important." "This is my house," I said slowly. "Well, technically it's been in the family trust since your grandmother passed," Dad said. "We've let you live here, but now we need to liquidate the asset." My grandmother had passed 5 years ago. She'd left me $95,000, which I'd used as a down payment on this house. I'd paid the mortgage myself for 5 years. But apparently my parents had convinced themselves otherwise. "I bought this house with my own money," I said. "Grandma's money," Mom corrected. "Which makes it a family asset. And Jason needs it more than you do right now." You're single, you can rent an apartment. Jason's starting a family. We're getting married in 6 months, Michelle added excitedly. Your mom showed me pictures of this gorgeous venue in Napa. It's $85,000 just for the venue, but it's so worth it. I looked around at my guests. My Aunt Linda nodding along, family friends murmuring congratulations, Jason grinning like he'd won the lottery. When exactly were you planning to tell me about this? I asked. We're telling you now, Dad said. Our realtor is actually here. Linda, come meet Cameron. A woman in her 50s approached, professional smile in place, business card already out. Cameron Hughes, Premier Properties. Your parents have told me so much about this lovely home. Have they told you I own it? Cameron's smile flickered. They mentioned it was a family property being sold for estate purposes. It's not an estate property. It's my primary residence that I purchased 5 years ago. Drew, don't be difficult, Mom said. We've already signed the listing agreement. Cameron's scheduling the photographer for next week. I set down my spatula. You signed a listing agreement for a house you don't own? Hold up. We're the beneficial owners through the family trust, Dad insisted, though his voice was less confident now. Your grandmother's inheritance paid for it. Grandma's inheritance was my down payment. I've paid the mortgage for 5 years. Alone. From my salary. I pulled out my phone. Would you like to see my mortgage statements? That's not necessary, Mom said quickly. The point is, the money came from family, so the house belongs to the family. Now the family needs it for Jason's wedding. A $200,000 wedding, I repeated. It's not just the wedding, Jason said. Michelle and I need help with a down payment too. Mom said we'd get at least $100,000 from the house sale. From selling my house that you don't own. Stop saying that, Mom snapped. You're being selfish. This is your brother's wedding. Don't you want him to be happy? I want him to have a wedding he can actually afford. We can afford it once we sell the house, Dad said. Cameron was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, perhaps we should verify the ownership situation before we proceed with. There's nothing to verify, Mom interrupted. Drew is just being stubborn because he doesn't want to share. He's always been like this. I'd been like this since I was 26 and bought my first house with money I'd saved. Since I'd worked 60-hour weeks as an architect to afford the mortgage. Since I'd renovated the kitchen myself last year and landscaped the yard the year before. But to my parents I was just being stubborn. I'm going to get something from inside, I said. Cameron, please don't leave. In my home office I pulled out my property file. Deed showing sole ownership. Mortgage documents in my name only. Property tax records showing 5 years of payments from my account. Title insurance. Everything that proved this house was mine. I returned to find Dad showing Cameron around the yard, pointing out features like he owned the place. The deck is composite, very low maintenance, Dad was saying. And the landscaping is professionally done. Increases value significantly. I did the landscaping, I said. Myself. Because it's my house. I handed Cameron my deed. She scanned it, her professional expression shifting to concern. This shows Andrew Patterson as sole owner. Not a trust, not your parents. You. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. But Grandma's money, Mom started, was a gift to me that I used for a down payment on a house I bought. In my name only. I showed Cameron the mortgage documents. 5 years of payments. All from my account. Cameron turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, did you not verify ownership before signing the listing agreement? We assumed, Dad said weakly. You can't sell a property you don't own. That's, Cameron paused, professional discretion keeping her from saying what we all knew. Fraud. This is ridiculous, Jason said. Drew, just agree to sell it. We need this wedding. You need a $200,000 wedding? We need a proper start to our marriage, Michelle said. Your parents promised us this money. You can't just take it away. I'm not taking anything away. They're trying to sell something that isn't theirs. But it should be theirs, Mom insisted. Family money should stay in the family, available for family needs. You're being selfish by keeping it all for yourself. Revelation. I'm being selfish by keeping my own house? Yes, Jason said flatly. You have all this space, all this value, and you won't help your own brother. I looked at him. My younger brother who'd never held a job longer than 2 years, who'd asked me for money at least a dozen times, who was now planning a wedding that cost more than my annual salary. Jason, what do you do for work right now? I'm between positions, he said defensively. He's transitioning careers, Michelle corrected. He's going to start a consulting business after the wedding. With what capital? With the money from the house sale, Michelle said as if this was obvious. So you're planning to start a business with money from selling my house without my permission. When you put it like that, you make it sound bad, Jason muttered. Cameron was gathering her things. I need to void that listing agreement. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, you've signed a contract to sell property you don't own. That's actionable. Actionable. Dad's face paled. The owner, your son, could pursue legal action for attempted fraud. I need to cancel this immediately and report it to my broker. Report it. Mom's voice rose. Cameron, we're friends. You went to college with Linda. Surely we can work this out quietly. I can't quietly cover up an attempt to sell someone else's property. That could cost me my license. She left quickly, already on her phone, probably calling her broker. Aunt Linda stood up. Drew, surely you can compromise. Family should help family. Aunt Linda, they tried to sell my house without telling me. Where's the compromise in that? They assumed you'd agree once you understood Jason's needs. They assumed wrong. $200,000 for a wedding, I said to Jason. Do you hear how insane that sounds? It's Michelle's dream wedding, Jason said. And we deserve it after everything we've been through. What have you been through? Unemployment? That you chose. I chose to pursue my passions instead of selling out like you did. I chose to be an architect and buy a house. That's not selling out, that's being an adult. Boys, please, Mom tried to interrupt. No, Mom. Jason needs to hear this. You don't get a $200,000 wedding funded by selling someone else's house. You get the wedding you can afford. Like everyone else. We can afford it if you just be reasonable, Michelle said. I am being reasonable. You're the ones trying to sell my property to fund a party. Dad stood up abruptly. Fine. Keep your house. But don't expect us to keep supporting you. Supporting me? I've lived independently for 8 years. When have you supported me? We gave you grandmother's inheritance. She gave it to me, in her will, that you had no control over. We could have contested it, Dad said. On what grounds? She left it to me because I was the only grandchild who visited her every week for the last 3 years of her life. You didn't contest it because you had no case. The backyard was silent except for burgers burning on the grill I'd forgotten about. Resolution. So that's it. Jason asked finally. You're really going to keep your house and let my wedding fall apart? Your wedding isn't falling apart. Your $200,000 venue plan is falling apart. Have a wedding you can afford. We've already put down deposits, Michelle said, tears forming. We've sent save the dates. Everyone knows about the Napa venue. Then you'll need to explain the change. That's not my problem. My parents gathered their things in angry silence. Jason and Michelle left without saying goodbye. Aunt Linda gave me a disappointed look on her way out. Only my friend Marcus remained, helping me scrape burned burgers off the grill. That was intense, he said. They tried to sell my house, Marcus. I heard. Your mom is something else. They really believe it belongs to them. Because 15% of the down payment came from my grandmother. The grandmother who left the money to you specifically. Doesn't matter. In their minds, family money means their money. Marcus scraped in silence for a moment. You doing okay? I will be. Once I change my locks. You think they'd try something? I think my mother still believes she's right and I'm being selfish. So yeah, I'm changing my locks. The next day, I received an email from Cameron's broker apologizing for the incident and confirming the listing agreement was void. My parents sent a text saying I was no longer welcome at family gatherings until I reconsidered my priorities. Jason called once, asking if I'd at least contribute $50,000 to the wedding as a gift. I declined. 3 months later, I heard through Aunt Linda that Jason and Michelle had a small wedding at a local venue. 50 guests instead of 200. It cost $8,000 total, which my parents paid. It was actually lovely, Aunt Linda told me. More intimate than the Napa plan would have been. I'm glad it worked out. Your mother still isn't speaking to you. I know. She really believed the house should be sold for Jason. I know that too. Doesn't make her right. I hung up and looked around my living room. My living room in my house that I'd bought with my money and nearly lost to my family's entitlement. They'd tried to sell it without asking. They'd signed listing agreements. They'd counted profits from an asset they didn't own. And when confronted with the actual deed, they'd blamed me for their fraud. My house. My deed. My boundary. Exactly as it should be.